Well, good morning, Little Masters, and welcome back to today's Tolkien Times. I'm the Man of the West, also from the Prancing Pony podcast, and let's get started with Word Nerd Wednesday. Now, when talking about the company, the 9 walkers that leave Rivendell, we often use the word fellowship. After all, it's right there in the title of the book, The Fellowship of the Ring. It's a relatively ordinary word with a meaning we all understand, or do we? Now, fellowship, as you might guess, is a solid Germanic word. It doesn't come to us from Latin through French or anything like that. It's part of the right English goodliness of speechcraft, as Tolkien might say, or actually did say, just not about the word fellowship. Fellowship has been in English since at least 1225 in Middle English, and possibly, according to the OED, as early as 1045 in Old English. It seems to be most likely of Scandinavian origin. There's a similar Old Icelandic word, fel-lowship. It's probably pretty obvious that it's just a combination of fellow, as in partner or companion, and the very common Germanic suffix ship, indicating the state or condition of being whatever, in this case fellows, like friendship, companionship, relationship. Now, we'll set aside the fact that for a time in Middle English, fellowship was a euphemism for sex, but we'll just move on. The OED believes that the word fellow came first. Fellowship is derived from it, not the other way around. And fellow is really the interesting word here. It was also an early borrowing into Old English as fellaga, meaning partner or one who shares with another. And that's from Old Norse philology. Now, that in turn most likely meant something like business partnership or joint venture. Comes from Old Icelandic fee, money, property. It's cognate with English fee, and I'm probably mispronouncing it. And Old Icelandic lag, that which is laid down, arrangement or partnership. And that's cognate with English law. So what we're seeing in fellow is a borrowing into Old English of a Scandinavian word that had a really strong connotation of obligation. Now, if you remember the debate between Elrond and Gimli when Elrond said, "No oath or bond is laid on you to go further than you will." That's all well and good, Master Elrond, but there sure is an implied mutual obligation present, just by virtue of Tolkien's use of the word fellowship. But what's interesting is that not Elrond or anybody else has really been calling them the fellowship in the book. And this is really weird, right? I mean, we all think of this group of 9 walkers as the Fellowship of the Ring. Like I said, it's right there on the tin. Look at how many books say Fellowship of the Ring. But they're very rarely actually called that in the text itself. They're referred to as the Fellowship in the prologue and in the appendices. But the word fellowship is only used a few times in the text itself by the narrator or the characters to describe the group. Just 9 times in all 3 volumes. Now, the first time the word is used is in the chapter rightly called The Breaking of the Fellowship, when Aragorn asks, "What shall now become of our company that has traveled so far in fellowship?" But here, that's the state in which the company traveled. It isn't the group noun. And it's used once more in this chapter, and then once in Flotsam and Jetsam, twice in The Window on the West. That's 5 times in the first 2 volumes. Then it's used once in each chapter, The Field of Cormallen, The Steward and the King, and The Grey Havens. But the only time it's ever used as a proper noun is in Many Partings, when Aragorn says, "Here then at last comes the ending of the Fellowship of the Ring." Now, in a way, it's like a bit of the frame narrative, really. The company was just the company until King Elessar called them the Fellowship of the Ring. And that was the name that got written down in history. Now, speaking of company, that is itself a very interesting word and worth a brief look. Unlike fellow, it does come to English through Old French from late Latin companionum, which literally means breadfellow or messmate. Now, the meanings changed over the years. In the mid-12th century, when it first came into English, it meant large group of people, but it quickly came to mean person or persons associated with another in any way within the next 100 years or so. A century later, it would come to mean a number of persons united to perform or carrying out anything jointly. Now, interestingly, its meaning as a military term, a subdivision of an infantry regiment, showed up around 1400. Giving its literal meaning as breadfellow or messmate, I'd actually have guessed that to be a far older meaning, but I was wrong. Now, with that look at fellowship and a bit of a glance at company, that concludes today's Word Nerd Wednesday. But come back as we explore the wide, wild, wonderful world of words weekly on Wednesdays. And if there's a word you want to know more about, please let me know by emailing bartleman@theprancingponypodcast.com. Now, if these few minutes leave you wanting more Tolkien content, be sure to check out the Prancing Pony podcast, where we've spent 7 years so far walking through the books, including lots of philological sidebars and just having a nice chat at the pub about our favorite author. Join me again tomorrow on Today's Tolkien Times for Third Age Thursday. And please like and subscribe on YouTube. Follow or subscribe on your podcast apps to make sure each episode gets downloaded to your device. And follow at Tolkien Times on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. And as Faramir says, go with the goodwill of all good men.